And now we get to talk about this interesting story of this gentleman who was seated there by the sheep gate in Jerusalem. I believe I've had the opportunity to be there, and the one takeaway was about 2017, 18 or so when we were there, was that I wasn't overly impressed with that particular pool. I don't know why it was, but I guess in the day it was spectacular. It was large. There were 5 big pillars that held up part of the building, and apparently there were literally scads of people. We're not told how many, but many, many people that would sit around this pool. And the reason that they would sit around this pool was that there was this sense that every now and again, an angel would come and be present and disturb the water. And when that happened, and when people saw it, they were invited to try to get up, get into the pool with the potential of being healed. Obviously, that must have happened, because if it was never happening and there was never a healing, I think it would have gotten kind of old very quickly. And so this gentleman had been sitting there. Jesus finds this one, and of course there are many others, but he zeroes in on one, and he asks him a very interesting question when you think about it. He said, "Do you want to be healed?" And instead of answering the question, the man kind of deflects it. And he says, "Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool, because every time the water is stirred and I see it, as I'm trying to get in, someone else gets there before I do." If that had gone on for 30 plus years, you can imagine how frustrating it must have been for him. I have no one. I try to get in, and I've always failed. His plight was pretty severe. There's an interesting piece of this in The Chosen, and I thought I would show it because it's just so appropriate to our story. As you watch this story, watch the posture of the person representing Jesus in particular.
Shalom.
Me?
Yes.
Shalom.
I have a question for you.
For me. I don't have many answers, but I'm listening.
Do you want to be healed?
Who are you?
We'll get to that later. But my question remains.
Will you take me to the water? Look, I'm having a really bad day.
You've been having a bad day for a long time. So?
Sir, I have no one to help me into the water when it's stirred up. And when I do get close, the others step down in front of me. And so...
Look at me. Look at me. That's not what I asked. I'm not asking you about who's helping you, or who's not helping, or who's getting in your way. I'm asking about you.
I've tried.
For a long time, I know. And you don't want false hope again, I understand. But this pool, it has nothing for you. It means nothing. And you know it. But you're still here. Why?
I don't know.
You don't need this pool. You only need me. So, do you want to be healed? So let's go. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk.
I'm free to walk, like he said. Don't forget your bed.
Why does this matter?
Because you're not coming back here. That life is over. Everything changes now.
I'm fascinated by the question. Do you want to get well? It assumes that A, you know you have a problem, and B, you actually want to change. And the fascinating thing about that is that we don't always want to change. So it's not always a yes. Do you want to be healed? It's going to mean a life shift. It's going to mean things aren't the way they used to be. 38 years of being a paralytic, his life was radically going to change. And Jesus tells him, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. And so this man chooses to do that, and the power of the Spirit floods into him, transforming his life forever. But of course, we've read the story a bit further, and we know that there was immediately a problem. And the problem had to do with the Sabbath and the leaders that were in the crowd. And they were really insistent rule keepers. Because when they looked at the man, they couldn't see what had just happened. All they could see was that he was no longer following the law. It was the Sabbath, after all. And in their culture, the Sabbath forbids you to carry your mat. Now we listen to that and we go, seriously? They were that persnickety about it? They were. The Sabbath was a big deal. And Jesus consistently caused grief for the religious leaders. He would say things like, you know what, the Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Or, the Son of Man is the Lord, even of the Sabbath. Or he would add, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. It was a big deal in their culture. And it's often been a pretty big deal in our culture. I know many of you have been around long enough to remember the day when on Sundays, almost everything was closed. And I remember living in Nova Scotia as the laws were slowly changing. It was the last holdout in Canada for non-shopping malls on Sunday. And as we were walking through that change culturally, I felt a lot of angst inside because I really felt it wasn't going to help our culture any. And I don't think it has. I also remember that as a teenager living here in Abbotsford, and I won't over-project this because it probably wouldn't have gone anywhere anyways, but I gave up a baseball career because I got to a certain level that you had to travel and play consistently on Sunday, and I chose not to. Now I know I have a passion for ball, and I wouldn't have gone that far. However, it was a huge sacrifice at the time. Jesus taught that the Sabbath is a gift from God, meant for rest, renewal, and for doing good. A time to reconnect with God, to show mercy, and to care for others. And we probably all have a lot to learn with, do we really celebrate Sabbath or our Sunday worship or whatever time of the week we prefer to focus on in ways that are really honoring to the Lord? Well, the religious leaders look at this man, they say, you can't be walking, you can't take that mat. The man is somewhat dumbfounded. They ask him, who did this? He didn't know because Jesus had disappeared into the crowd. He literally could say, I don't know. But as we've seen in other stories, Jesus then sought out this man. He finds him, and he says, you are well now. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you. I got to confess, that particular sentence causes me angst. I don't know quite what to do with it. And we won't spend time right now to try to unpack all of that, because in other stories we've already heard over the last number of weeks that Jesus did not focus and make this tie between sin and illness. But somehow I think he's trying to remind this gentleman that healing is actually both physical as well as spiritual and mental. And how we live does matter. Jesus then is challenged by the religious leaders. And so begins really the walk towards Calvary. And we're in the Lenten season. And this is where the pressure on Jesus really begins to intensify by the religious leaders, because they accuse him of doing things that he should never be doing, like healing on the Sabbath. And Jesus makes this comment. He says, my Father is always at work. We sang that just a few moments ago. To this very day, and I too am working. I'm doing what the Father does. I'm modeling what he is all about. He was laser focused on his Father's will. he was one with the Father. And of course, that in itself was seen as heresy. But his focus was on mission. He wanted to represent the Father well, and he invites us to also similarly reflect his light into our world. I've told a few of you that a couple weeks ago, I was asked to write a little piece for the Canadian Mennonite. I'm going to be published in that rag. Is that what you call a newspaper? They asked me to do something that is rather unique, and I'm not the only one. There's probably 8 to 12 people across the country that have been asked to do this, but I thought it fit so well with this moment that I would tell you about it. They invited us to read part of Ephesians chapter 4. And in Ephesians chapter 4, Paul talks about the fact that we are called, some of us to be apostles, some to be teachers, some to be leaders, etc. And he says the purpose is that so all of us speak the truth in love, we grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. So we're supposed to reflect Jesus in all that we are and all that we do. Then Paul adds these words. He says in verse 17, "So I tell you this." And the folks at the magazine said, that's where the sentence ends and where you are to begin writing your brief piece. So I tell you this. It's rather humbling to try to put yourself in the place of the Apostle Paul. But I've reflected on it, and I finally decided to write something. And I thought I would share it with you. If it never goes to press, then at least you've heard it once. So I tell you this, and it's directed to the church. It's time to step out of the shadows. Time to move beyond safety and security. Time for engagement. Time to lean into courage. Like your ancestors, you are invited to stand strong before impending danger. In this increasingly polarized world, you represent Jesus. You are his hands and his feet, sacrificially embracing those whom he embraced, those familiar and close, but especially those on the margins. Those who are so often unseen, with determination and purpose, step forward and step between. It will stretch you. It will make you uncomfortable. It could cost you. But with your eyes focused on Jesus, take the steps marked out for you. You do not need to be alarmed. Your Master Jesus has charted the path, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. As you embark, you will reflect his light. You will demonstrate a better way, the way of shelter, protection, advocacy, and love, the way of curiosity and inclusion. Whether you are planted in the country or immersed in the city, step out of the shadows with your eyes focused on Jesus it will become clear where your allegiance lies. The time to engage is now. I think we're at an interesting time. A lot of stuff is swirling in our world. There's a lot of traumatic events, a lot of pain. And I invite us to represent Jesus well, to let his light and love shine through us in whatever context we find ourselves. And I guess my only last question would be to each of us, are we willing? Are we willing?